Welcome, everybody. I'm Colleen Condon, and welcome to Porch Chats. Today, the Democratic Party of Charleston is proud to host Jaime Harrison, my friend, who is running for the U.S. Senate. Welcome, Jaime.
Thank you, Colin. It's so good seeing you and so good to be on with all my friends in Charleston.
Exactly. Well, if I don't say some of this up front, I might forget it because we'll get so comfortable, I know. So let me brag on you a little bit, my friend. So my friend Jaime here was born to a single mom, raised by his grandparents in Orangeburg. With hard work and the help of mentors, Jaime went to Yale, got a scholarship, and he studied political science. And after that, he came back to Orangeburg. He taught low-income students, and then from there decided to go back to law school up in D.C. so that he could also work for Congressman Jim Clyburn. Jaime was the first African-American executive director of the House Democratic Caucus. With Jaime's efforts, Democrats raised the minimum wage, pushed an end to the war in Iraq, and passed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Hate Crime Prevention Act. Jaime became chair of the state Democratic Party. We worked together on a lot of things, and during it, he focused on improving communities across the state and created the Clyburn Fellowship to elevate the next generation of leaders. Now he's running for U.S. Senate to restore hope. And Jaime, we're just so pleased to have you here today and do everything we can to help you go to the U.S. Senate.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, the one thing that I know about the Charleston County and Charleston County Democrats specifically, you guys, you pick winners. And you're able to help folks get across that finish line. You were able to do it for Joe Cunningham last cycle, and I know that you all are going to help me do it this cycle. And it's just not me. I mean, we got state Senate races that you all are targeting there, state House races. There's so many good candidates in Charleston, and I know that how Charleston goes will determine how we go on this U.S. Senate race. And so I am so appreciative of you and your leadership over the years and your friendship and all that I know that you all will do this campaign cycle.
Well, thank you, Jaime. I appreciate the sacrifice you, Marie, and the boys are making for you to do this. I know how much work it takes, 24/7, 365.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, with Porch Chats, we've just started it this month, but certainly we look forward to having you back regularly. We're trying to make sure in this time of COVID that we can get our folks to get to know our great candidates. And so I appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah.
I wanted to focus on some of the issues that are really affecting South Carolinians now. You know, we're using Zoom and have the opportunity to have this wonderful interaction. Part of why we actually started taping it this week is working with a candidate who lives in a rural area, so she couldn't get solid broadband. It's bad enough to have that problem to try to just campaign, but of course people are having this problem with health care and students who are trying to get an education still.
Yep. Well,
what can we do?
Well, this is it, Colin. You know, about 26% of rural households in South Carolina are unable to access reliable broadband. And if we put those in more concrete terms, you know, it means folks can't purchase goods on the internet. They can't fill out online forms necessary for services like telehealth. I remember early on, because I'd been in New York and I came back home, and, you know, because of the pollen and all those other stuff, I was having some problems with my sinuses and all. And, you know, I wanted to make sure before my family got back home that I didn't have COVID. And there was no testing. And the only way that you could really get some kind of diagnosis was to go to MUSC and use their telehealth portal to put in your symptoms to see whether or not you actually you needed to go and get a test done. And I was able to do that. Well, the problem is there are a lot of folks in South Carolina who couldn't do that because there is no broadband in the areas that they live in. As we start to, you know, folks are saying you got to work from home. Well, you can't work from home if you don't have broadband internet. You know, kids are going to school. Many of them are going home to communities where there aren't any services. And so, you know, and I applaud the governor and the superintendent for this idea, but it's putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, and that they made some of the school buses into hotspots and placed them into communities. And yeah, that's helpful, but that is not a permanent solution to this problem. We have to fix this issue of broadband access in South Carolina. It is 2020. How in the world do we expect our kids to compete with the rest of the world when they can't even connect with the rest of the world? And so, there has to be an investment made on a state level, but also on the federal level to put resources into broadband, particularly into our rural communities.
Well, and in fact, these rural communities are the same ones that have the lowest test scores and lowest chance for success.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So we're literally, for kids who were already doing well and are in a prosperous school district and have internet and parents working from home, they're able to maintain their educational studies right now a lot better than the child living in the rural community whose parents are still working at the grocery store.
And those kids and those families already have barriers, and now we're pushing them further behind, and it becomes just yet another challenge that they have to overcome, and it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way, and that's where real leadership comes in. It's sad to say, South Carolina's a beautiful state. We have amazing people, but we have the crappiest leadership you can find on a state level and in the federal government. We, with exceptions, Jim Clyburn and Joe Cunningham are working their butts off, and we have some great mayors, like the mayor of Charleston and mayor in Columbia, and they're doing all that they can for, to provide. But when you're constantly trying to do things and you have the wind blowing in your face because the other members of leadership in the state are rowing in a different direction, or just not rowing at all, it's just very problematic, and it impacts the least of these in our society.
Oh, absolutely. It's a little scary to me, I gotta say, to realize how much the executive branch of government is solely making decisions without the balance of the legislature, both in federal government and in our state.
Yep. And without adhering to science and just common sense. I mean, why do you keep the beaches open in South Carolina? If you need to flatten the curve, we all want to get businesses back open. But in order to get businesses back open, we have to flatten this curve. We have to make sure that we reduce the number of people who are walking around with this virus. And so when you take this prolonged approach, it's going to be a prolonged approach until you can get back to a normal. And we've seen that. I mean, you got the test cases in some of these European countries. We've seen countries that have locked everything down and they're getting back to normal. And we've seen those that have just trickled. Well, we'll do this and we'll do that, and therefore this thing is still there, and it's still it's like a 1,000-pound weight on your chest, and it's still holding them down. So you would think they would use common sense and say, well, if that's not working there, maybe we shouldn't do the same thing here. But common sense is not something that is common.
Unfortunately, that is too true, and then of course it's made worse again, because Medicaid expansion is still been opposed in South Carolina by Republicans.
That's exactly right. I told somebody the other day, a reporter, that if someone said, Jaime, think of the worst case scenario for the spread of this virus. And I would say to them, give me the characteristics of a state that would be the worst case scenario. I would say it would be a state that has no broadband, a state where a large swath of the people don't have health insurance, so no Medicaid expansion, a state where there are folks with tons of pre-existing conditions, diabetes, lupus, asthma, a state where there's high number of seniors and retirees, a state where their hospitals have closed over the past few years. And now you think about what state fits that description, and it's South Carolina.
Our home state.
Scary. It is extremely scary, and I pray each day and every night for our state and the people in the state. but it is scary. And we could have prevented some of this if we had visionary leadership that did planning and that would put the people of the state first. Put the people first. Our greatest asset are not our businesses and the companies and the factories. Those are great things, and that's part of what makes America so different and so great. But the thing that makes us amazing are the people that live in the state and in this nation. And we should always make sure that we protect our greatest asset, which is the people. And it's just sad that we see that we have leaders who don't do that.
And I got to tell you, it stressed me to no end. It's taken
Oh,
required a lot of deep breaths and some downtime to do self-care to make it through all of these balancing acts. And luckily I have good medical care.
Yeah.
We don't have decent mental health telehealth around the state either. Of course, one more thing we don't have.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get better mental health services across the state?
Well, that's one of the things that I would love to see in terms of, if we could have really implemented the Affordable Care Act, particularly here, expand Medicaid here in South Carolina. Part of what I want to see to make the ACA even more robust is to include more funding for mental care, include more funding for vision and dental, which are also things that are underfunded in many of the programs that we see. We just recently had a town hall where we focused on mental health in this coronavirus situation that we're all finding ourselves in, because it's extremely stressful. Not only are people concerned about their physical well-being, but they're also concerned about their financial well-being. And so that puts such a burden on families. Then they have to educate their kids from home. Some folks have been laid off, and I know the pressure that causes. And then you have your senators who, instead of fighting for you because you've been laid off, they want to demonize you because you've been laid off and make sure you don't get the resources that you should get in order to help you and your family in this hard time. And so the amount of stress on people is approaching an unbearable level. And we got to figure out how we address that. And again, I think it all goes back to leadership, particularly in a time like this. Is about having clarity and an understanding of what people are going through. I told a group, I was on my town hall the other day, I told them the situation. I was with my 5-year-old, and he was just having a hard time because he's stressed also. His normal is no longer normal. He's not going to school, doesn't see his friends, the things that he would do each and every day, it's just different. And so he's stressed and he's scared about what's going on. He knows about the coronavirus and he constantly asks about it and people who are impacted by it. And so we put jam on his bagel the other morning and he just freaked out. I mean, he normally likes jam, but it's just too much and he just freaked out. And finally I asked him, I said, buddy, what's going on? He said, Daddy, he said, I'm very, very sad. He said, Daddy, can you just hold my hand? And I held his hand and he said, because he was heaving and crying and all, and then he calmed down and he said, Dad, when you hold my hand, it just reminds me like when I was on the plane for the first time and I was scared and it made me feel better. And Colleen, I just think people right now, we know we can't hold their hands in reality, but we can make them just feel better. Give them some assurance and some clarity that things are going to get better. And we can do that by showing them that we're listening to the scientists, showing them that we care about their health, that we're focusing on getting tests out there for everybody, that we're focused on their financial well-being. We know that it's stressful. We know these small businesses, people who put their entire livelihoods into these businesses, and now are faced with the fact that they may have to close down and never open back up. We got to step up and do what we can to make people feel better. And that's what real leadership means. And sad to say, we're just not getting that. We're not getting it in South Carolina, and we're not getting it in DC either.
And then for the paycheck protection part of the
Oh,
small business stimulus package to
oh,
already be exhausted by small businesses.
like Ruth's Chris, right? That got
Right.
$20 million. I mean, when I read that article, I almost fell out my chair. And you got small businesses, and I've been calling some small business owners here in South Carolina. And one woman told me, she said, Jamie, I have applied to 5 different banks, and I'm just in the queue, and I can't get someone to just say, yes, you're going to get a loan. And she said, if I don't get one, I'm going to have to close down. And I don't think we could open back up. And the way that the program was designed, they didn't really talk to a lot of small business owners. Particularly in the hospitality and service spaces, businesses that are operating off of very slim margins. So the loan for PPP was you have to pay it back in two years. Well, that's a short amount of time. And if you're not making a whole lot of profit year after year, it's not that folks want a handout. They just want to be able to do it in such a manner that allows them to continue to operate, run a profit, continue to build off. So, increasing that 2 years to at minimum 5, but probably even up to 10, to allow these companies to continue to pay back and then pay their employees and all of the other things. But it's that type of foresight that's just missing. And I'm
not seeing any leadership.
No leadership. And I'm trying my best, talking to Congressman Clyburn, who's helping to lead this effort on oversight for the CARES Act and how we respond to this, and making sure that he understands the things that I'm hearing on the ground, so that they can make the appropriate changes that are necessary.
We are so blessed to have Congressman Clyburn set to hopefully shepherd in part 2 of the CARE Act.
Exactly right. We got to get some more funding in there and make sure it is targeted to small businesses, like ones that really are small. The shops that are on the streets of Charleston, and mom and pop shops that have been around for generations. We need to protect those companies and make sure that they're around for another generation.
It also seems we're extremely behind in testing, and I don't think Lindsey Graham's doing anything about it.
No, he's too busy throwing blame at China. You know what? Excuse my language. I don't give a rat's ass about whether this started in China. The question is, it's here. It's here in the United States right now. How does that help the people who need to be tested? I read a statistic where they said about 85% of the cases here in South Carolina are not being diagnosed. That there are 85% more cases walking around here that people don't even know because they haven't been able to be tested. They had claimed that we were going to have all of these millions of tests conducted by and that's a lie. It has not been done. And so, I'd rather, instead of seeing Lindsey on every goddamn TV, excuse my language, but I get so heated because this is about people's real lives. Instead of being on every television show and going on Fox News to blame China and China needs to, why don't you concentrate on making sure that the tests get here in South Carolina? Why don't you do that? Why don't you concentrate on and figuring out those hospitals that closed? How can we reopen those hospitals? Do something that actually has an impact on the people of South Carolina instead of you favoring and trying to get brownie points with the President of the United States. Nobody cares about that at this point. We care about our jobs. We care about our health care. We care about our family members who are being inflicted by this deadly virus. And that's what people want right now. They don't want your Washington, D.C. political games because you want to be in favor with the President of the United States. Who cares? If you want that, we will give you a full time. This is my gift to Lindsey Graham. We're going to allow you to draw unemployment. You can draw unemployment, Lindsey Graham, and see what that feels like. Just test it out, right?
I don't know. He might take advantage of it, Jamie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we wouldn't want him to do that.
That is one person I want to see on unemployment.
Jamie. Yes.
Jamie, thank you. We appreciate you running and being actually caring what's happening to South Carolinians. What a concept.
Yeah. I
Well,
know.
I'm glad you had such a great quarter. It'll help you get the message out over the next few months. And
I mean,
anything the Charleston Democratic Party can do to help, please let us know.
thank you, Colleen. Given the times that we're in now, the fact that so many folks dug deep in their pockets to help us, make history and break a record was great. But we got to continue this effort. We got to keep pushing to change the leadership in the state. And I feel really, really good about the direction we're going in. I know that we have people who are hungry for change, and it's just not Democrats. I'm hearing from Republicans and independents who aren't happy with the direction of the state and the direction of the country right now, and they want to see something different. And they want somebody who's going to fight for them, their families, and their communities. And I will do that. I will wake up every day and go to bed every night thinking about how to make South Carolina a better place for all of its, not just a select few, but all of its people.
Jaime, I have utter confidence in you doing that. So thank you so much. And let's keep up the good fight to get you elected.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and looking forward to seeing you soon.